This is the On All Cylinders podcast,
powered by Summit Racing.
Your host for today is Summit Racing's Al Noe with special guest, pro touring pioneer Mark Stielow.
Here we go.
Today we are joined by a very special guest. Mark, I'm so glad that you could join us today. You've been kind enough to give us some of your time and talk about first-gen Camaros today, which we're looking forward to.
Yeah, appreciate it. That's going to be fun.
So Mark was a native of Missouri, graduated from Missouri University of Science and Technology, and joined GM as a test engineer in 1991. Began a long and winding career that saw Mark leave the automotive giant in 94 before returning in 99, and then resuming with your current role at GM, which keeps you quite busy, I understand.
Yeah, so I've had a great career at GM doing a wide variety of things.
Let's talk about your job today at GM. What specific responsibilities do you have? Because I know every day is an adventure, right?
Yeah. So right now, two and a half years ago, I came back to motorsports. So I was in motorsports earlier in my career, but I came back and we're trying to pull motorsports more in-house at General Motors. So we've set up a team that supports IndyCar racing, sports car racing through IMSA, WEC, and some of the other sanctioning bodies, but we have the Corvette race program, the Cadillac LMDH program, which we're going to take back to Le Mans this year. We have our off-road race program, and then we have an electric race program with the Hummer EV.
So you're a little bit busy these days, right? So are you ever home on the weekends to go out and do some of this pro touring fun stuff?
You start ramping into the season, and between all the different series, you could be pretty much you could be at a racetrack every weekend if you wanted to be.
So, hey, let's talk about some of the fun that you've had with cars over the years, Mark. So there's your day job.
Yep.
And then I've always said you've got really two jobs, because the number of cars you build blows me away. Like, it is unbelievable how busy you always are. What's your current project? What are you working on?
So I stumbled into a Patina 69 Camaro that was originally ordered as a 396 big block car, but then kind of sat in the desert and got a nice patina on it. So I'm going to go back through that car and freshen it up to be a nice, everybody throws different terms around. It's going to be kind of a pro touring car, or a resto mod, kind of however that kind of shakes out.
Very cool. Still patinaed though?
I'm going to leave the patina on it because it was like an old drag car. And it was kind of the cool thing about that car was it was ordered new by a guy by the name of Vic Hobbs as a 396 SS car with a 410 gear radio delete. And he just drag raced it through the 70s and 80s and into the 90s, and then it sat kind of neglected in the desert in California, and it's just got like a really kind of weathered but low mile, rust-free, heavily pounded on car.
That's cool piece. So speaking of that, you mentioned to me that car, the floor pan, had some issues from the years of drag racing and abuse.
Yeah,
what'd you find when you started to take the car apart?
Well, I bought the car and it was really rust-free, but we pulled the carpets out, and actually the drive shafts had blown up so hard over the years, like the tunnel was dog-legged. And it blew up so hard that the seat pans on a 69 Camaro were actually bent. So, and then there's other holes in the bottom of the car. So even though it's a rust-free floor pan, we decided to cut it out and put a straight one back in it.
Man, you think about the number of times, it makes you wonder if that car was ever pole vaulted or what drive shafts breaking and stuff. By the way, folks, we sell a lot of safety gear at Summit Racing Equipment. So if you need a drive shaft loop or good helmet, driving gloves, whatever, aside from keeping your car safe, we got to keep you safe too. And sometimes with old drag cars, I always said if cars could talk, it would be awesome to hear all the stories they could tell us.
Well, I don't know about you, but when I was growing up in high school, you'd go to the drag strip, and the stuff that you saw on a day-to-day basis, on the week-to-week basis on test and tune nights, would scare you to death. Like people blowing stuff up. So
how did you get started in the automotive industry? I think all of us can think back and remember like the first fast car you rode in, car show you went to, something that made you say, this is pretty awesome and I want to figure out how to do this. What was that for you?
Well, for me, I really wanted to work in I read, like a lot of kids, I read Hot Rod Magazine, Motor Trend, Car and Driver, and I really was enamored by cars, and I wanted to work in the automotive industry. And actually, my high school guidance counselor said I could never get there. So
good job, counselor. Attaboy.
So I started off at Missouri State University, and I was doing okay. So I just decided to call Ford, Chrysler, and GM HR and say, where do you get your engineers from? And they all said Missouri School of Science and Technology if you live in Missouri. So I transferred there. 30 days later, I had a summer internship at GM working on the Camaro Firebird showroom stock race program.
Wow.
So in 1988, my first job at GM was supporting the F-Car, all the F-Car showroom stock racing stuff. So, and the fun fact, at the end of that summer, my summer job was I personally hand produced there was 8 1LE packages.
Oh, I was going to ask you that if that was when you were there.
Yeah.
So the first 8, you had your hands in that.
Yeah, I
huh?
hand carried the prop valves and some other parts out to Van Nuys, California. And when the cars came down the line, we assembled them and they got sold to customers.
Cool. Did you ever try to find one of those cars and say,
No, I mean, I think they all, because they were just, the people who ordered them didn't realize they were ordering that package because they ordered all the performance stuff minus air conditioning, and it triggered the 1LE package, and they got the bits and pieces.
So what did you do within GM after that? So that was your first piece as an intern.
Yeah.
Then where did it go from there?
When I hired in full-time at GM, I was underhood thermal for cop cars, which was awesome. I was only there for about 9 months, and then I went into motorsports. So I was back with my experience with showroom stock racing. In 1991, Herb Fischel formed the Motorsports Technology Group, where he pulled Buick, Oldsmobile, Chevy, all the brands used to race against each other, and we brought them all into one thing, Motorsports Technology Group. And I was in that area supporting all the showroom stock racing activities. So the Corvettes, the Camaros, the Firebirds.
Were you at GM when the Camaro took a hiatus for a little bit? And
Yeah, I was at GM when they paused the Gen 4 car and went out of production. So that was a sad day.
But were you there when they brought it back?
Yep. So Al Oppenheiser, actually, my 69 Camaro, the Mule, was in GM design staff when they were working on the Gen 5 car as an inspiration car.
Oh, cool.
And so like when the Gen 5 car launched, Al Oppenheiser was the chief engineer. And I was at the Detroit Auto Show when they brought the show car out. So everybody saw kind of the 69 Camaro cues in that car.
Yeah.
But that silver 69 Camaro I had was actually sitting in GM design staff when some of the work was being done.
So over the years, Mark, you've built a lot of first-gen Camaros. And actually, that's really how you and I met. Because I had a first-gen. I think back then you had the Red Witch.
Yep.
You and I met somewhere. It might have been Power Tour, and then you did the big block in it.
Yep.
And then you and I spent some time on the dyno trying to figure that out. Actually, funny story. Mark called and said, "Hey, I'm going to chassis dyno this car. Do you want to come over?" And at the time, I was a product manager for Excel and DFI, and I went over and met you. And the guy running the dyno and his dad, kind of crusty, older gentleman. Yeah. They're running the dyno, and we're trying to make power pulls on it at like 5,000, 5,500. The thing kept breaking up. And you and I were throwing parts at it, because, of course, the dyno operator and the tuner, it's never a problem with anything aside from some of the electronics, right? Just blame the electronics. You and I were putting plug wires, plugs, cap, rotor, coil. I mean, we threw, I don't know how many, like a truckload of parts at it that day. And I'm pulling my hair out because I'm going, I can't believe if it's the fuel injection, how embarrassing. Because you ran our stuff for years. We're trying to figure it out. And then 3 days later, you gave me a call.
Yeah, one of the outer springs had broken on that.
Yeah, so we're trying to fix a miss. It was a high RPM miss. Can't figure it out. And it ends up being a mechanical problem. So, by the way, we sell valve springs at Summit too. So if you need valve springs, but
that block in that thing, that was an all aluminum 630, I think it was a 532 big block. I forget how big it was, but it was one of the first trick flow aluminum blocks.
Yes.
Big blocks. So it was a short deck, 4.600 bore big block.
That was a bad dude. I remember even at 5,000, the power that thing made was really impressive. It was crazy. But that was really one of my favorite cars you built. And over the years, the variety of cars you built, Mark, is just awesome. Because, you've built SEMA award-winning cars that are, honestly, I think probably Hellfire was the one that comes to mind. That was the one with the all-carbon front end with the stripes inlaid in the carbon. And you actually, one of the images that we have is a reunion of your cars. And I think it's kind of cool because it reminds me of the scene in Iron Man where they have the reunion of all the Iron Man guys come together. Well, all Mark's cars, not all of them, but a good assortment of your car were stirred together. Tell us about that experience. And was it cool seeing all the things you built over the years all gathering in one place? Yeah,
the really cool thing about that was, we wanted to do a story with Hot Rod Magazine, and we were going to do a feature on Hellfire. So we got together some of the previous cars. We did it in Des Moines, Iowa around the Good Guys show. And I got to drive all the cars kind of back to back. And they all have a little bit different personality, but they're all kind of the same general family. So it was a lot of fun to get them together and drive, get a chance to drive them all. And just when you jump into them, they kind of brings you a memory of when you were working on that car, thrashing on it, trying to get it done.
Did you have one that was a favorite?
The favorite is Red Devil. And that car was built back in 2009, 2010. And it's one of those cars, everything went right. I introduced the car and I started racing it that summer. And the Pro Touring shootouts, the Optima shootout stuff was starting to become more popular. I brought it to Holly LS Fest. It won that. I took it some other shootouts, and we ended up taking it to SEMA. It got voted into Gran Turismo as one of the cars that's in the game. So for kids at home, if you have Gran Turismo 5, you can go on there and click that car and crash my car on the Nürburgring. And so then that car went on to win Optima Shootout. And it was just like everything came together.
Is that the one that was in the Optima battery commercial?
Yeah.
That was, okay.
Yeah. So that car was, just a big thrash, but it all kind of came together and it worked. So it was good.
And what was the engine in that car? I don't remember.
So that was a 427 cubic inch LS based, but with a LS9 supercharger on it. So it made a little over 875 horsepower in that trim, but a ton of torque. And for the Optima Shootout, before the different events, the speed stop and the road course autocross and the design portion of it, I think we won. We won it overall and won most of the events. I had my own homebrew ABS on it, so it was a fun car.
That's one thing, Mark. I think you've always had, I guess, foresight, maybe call it visionary, of going and taking a car to the next level. So like anti-lock brakes, when people were talking about doing it, you were the one doing it.
Yeah.
And you were putting anti-lock brakes on old muscle cars, which is awesome. And now today, like if you look at a lot of the high-level Optima competitors, it's like the standard now, whether it's the Bosch ABS system or they adapted something else. What's next, do you think? Mag shocks, is that going to be a thing?
Maybe. I mean, it's like part of my reason I put ABS on that car back then was all the development driving I did at GM was with ABS cars. And it was like when I jump in my hot rod with passive brakes, it was always like, I had to kind of like always remember like this thing does, don't lock up the brakes. It's got passive brakes. So I really did it at that time for a real competitive advantage. Yeah. Now I think you're going to start seeing people being able to, I think the next thing is going to be like classic IC engine, but maybe E front axle or something like that. Wow. So I think that'll be like the E-Ray, the new Corvette that's got electric front axle, IC in the back. Those things are awesome to drive and very quick and 1050 in the quarter mile from the factory. That's pretty solid. So,
yeah, that's rolling. It's interesting, Mark, when you said that about the hybridization of newer vehicles. Where do you see that going within GM? So like the E-Ray is a great example where, and I love reading all the online blogs as much as I can anyway, and different magazines and stuff. And everyone was saying, oh, the E-Ray is going to be all electric. It's the electric Corvette. It's all electric. It's all electric. And then the car got introduced and GM went, no, still got a traditional combustion engine, which typical Corvette buyers love because of the exhaust note and the experience of driving and all the stuff. But it's got electric in the front. So in my opinion, it's the best of both worlds when you really look at it. Super fast car, it's heavier. And I've had people tell me, well, look how much heavier it is, blah, blah, blah. It's still a bullet, though. It's still super fast. Do you think that's really the direction where we're going to see performance vehicles going? Yeah,
I mean, some of the electric vehicles that are out there now are super impressive, the performance numbers. So definitely, our portfolio at GM, we have electrified future. We have a lot of electric vehicles coming. But there's still a big investment in ICE, internal, like we like to say, it's not the end of the ICE age yet. Yeah. So, so we're still building internal combustion engines for, your people with trucks and performance stuff. I think there's definitely going to be a large ICE works for a lot of things, moving things around, but electric for most people, day-to-day usage, it'll be fine.
Yeah.
And then right now there's a lot of
commutes. It works.
And then for like those niche vehicles, like the Lucids and some of those other vehicles, even like that little electric car that set the crazy lap time up, the hill climb at Goodwood Festival of Speed.
Oh yeah,
the thing runs 8s in a quarter mile. Like it's that stuff's crazy fast.
Yeah.
So that stuff's coming, but I think there's always going to be internal combustion engines around. I got interviewed for one of the magazines, and they were asking me a similar question. And I said, like, in today's society, there's no need for horses, but people have equestrian centers. We race them. We do things with them. People still love horses. There's still always going to be people who love internal combustion engines. So we're still going to drag race them. We're still going to road race them. We're going to collect them. No matter what happens, I think internal combustion engines are going to be around for a long time.
Yeah, no doubt. And Mark, it's funny on the electric front because you mentioned something that is very near and dear to myself and one of my coworkers, Brian Nutter's heart. We drove our Tesla down to Arkansas and went land speed racing with it and then drove it back. And we did that partly for the story, the adventure, but also to learn about the EV market and what do we know and what can you find out. That long road trip and the charging that's required and the stops and everything, it wasn't bad. I'm not saying that, but it's different. Yeah. And you've got to plan your trip, your route, and everything else around that. once we got down to the event, the car's a bullet. I mean, the thing, a 4-door, literal family sedan, pretty much stock with the exception of suspension modifications we did, wheels, tires, and some safety gear. The car will go 1170s in the quarter. It went 136 and a half mile. I mean, the thing's a rocket. So it's like, and I agree with you, it's definitely coming, but it's comforting to know the ICE component is going to be there. And GM just made a huge investment, which we were all celebrating about this because we saw the press release. It was like $800 million in the next generation. I call it LS, but it's really LT based engine platform, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah. So we're going to keep, we're for our SUVs and pickup trucks, we're still going to have a large segment of that will be, internal combustion engine stuff.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, like today's cars, I mean, when you and I were growing up, if you had a 1050 second quarter mile car, that was a hairy beast. Like you were not driving that thing back and forth to work. But now at GM, like we got a few things that run in the 10s, and it's just crazy. Like you fire them up, driving back and forth to work, but then you put the pedal down, like it's pretty impressive. Like even every now and then I'm driving, I'm like, holy crap, this stuff is fast.
Yeah. What do you think of the new Z06?
I got to spend 4 weeks in one a while back, and fantastic car.
Yeah.
So my one Z06 story. So I was at Le Mans. So part of my job is like we go to Le Mans. We're running the Corvettes at Le Mans. So I snuck away last year from Le Mans to go to the Nürburgring, and the guys from work were testing the new Z06s there and the Cadillac CT5 Blackwings. So I snuck up there, got to run some laps around the Nürburgring in those cars. And it's like truly phenomenal. The Z06 poise and composure around that extremely technical, hard track is like one of the fastest cars. Well, it's the fastest car ever driven around there. But just the confidence, the weight distribution with the mid-engine background, the aero balance and everything on the car was like lights out fast.
Bullet.
Yeah. But on the flip side, the CT5 Blackwing was also like bullet fast. And it was very I've driven every version of V at the ring. And that car is like super refined and it's like really, really nice car also.
When you do that, Mark, out of curiosity, you turn off all the driver assist stuff. I mean, you've driven a lot of really, really fast stuff. So I'm not suggesting any of our viewers to do that, because sometimes that stuff's there for a reason to keep you out of trouble. But do you typically get in and turn off all the nannies and off you go?
Like for the recon laps, I'll leave the nannies on. And that particular day it was misty in a couple corners. So I had it in Performance Traction Management 4, I think.
Okay.
And then it dried. And then I got to run some dry laps.
Full bore. Yeah.
So, but now like everything, all that stuff, early days with Performance Traction Management, it wasn't as refined. And now like you go to the high levels of Performance Traction PTM, and it's so good. It really just kind of gives you a little bit of safety net with stuff. So the nannies are much more integrated now than they used to be.
What was it like driving on the Nürburgring? I mean, that track, I've never been there. I have a plan someday. It's bucket list.
Yeah.
Got to go there, got to do it. How in the world can you remember the track, or is it so big that you're really just trying to think ahead to the very next corner?
Oh, I can close my eyes and play it in my head.
Can you really?
Oh, wow. Yeah. But so when you get over there, they run you through driver training, and it's off memory 12.7 miles around, 1,000-foot elevation change, and you go airborne in 3 spots. It's like a pretty technical place. But as you're learning it, your brain kind of compresses it, and you kind of it helps.
You segment it kind of.
Yeah, you kind of segment it. It's kind of like I divide it in quarters. It's kind of like, this is a racetrack, that's a race. It's like 4 tracks tied together.
What's the favorite track you've ever been on?
That place.
Yeah,
just because it's just the history and the technical challenge of the thing, and it's just a super hallowed ground kind of place to go. So here in the States, I like VIR. VIR is extremely nice. CODA, if you ever get a chance to drive Circuit of the Americas, that track is fantastic.
So where have you not driven that you've got on your list that you're like, I got to go there? Goodwood, is that a thing where you'd say?
I was wanting to drive up the hill at Goodwood Festival of Speed, and I've never done that. I've known some people who have. If you've never been to it, it's just an event. Super cool, and there are a lot of just the ambiance of the whole deal is worth going to. It's worth making the trip.
How about, aside from tracks, what about events?
Yeah, I mean, the Optimus shootout stuff was awesome because all the people that I competed against and with became good friends of mine. So we would meet each other at different events and things like the Motor State Challenge, awesome event, super well run, super chill, a lot of fun, very family friendly. Bring the wife, and those were very fun events. And then an Optima out in Vegas, the whole build up, you got your car on display at SEMA all week long. Then you run the event. Jimmy Day does a great job putting that event on. I feel super fortunate that I've done well in it in the past. And, I have great memories around that stuff. But kind of how I started on this whole thing with all these different cars was the first car I built back in '93 was to compete in one lap of America.
That was a white Camaro.
That was a white Camaro.
Tri-tip?
Tri-tip. So a lot of the parts got driven into that car because I wanted to harden it to do one lap of America. Then I kind of got over that. And then these Optimus shootouts came along. And that was a whole new level of let's build cars to go do that. So anyway, it's kind of how some of those cars kind of ended up how they are.
Hey, let's talk about one lap. So that event intrigues me. I've been to pieces of that event, never driven in it. What's it like? I've heard it's like in a phone booth for a week.
Well, Kyle Tucker that used to own Detroit Speed and the founder of Detroit Speed and I were good friends. So I talked him into doing it with me in 1993. And we're two punk 20-year-old kids with a 500 horsepower 69 Camaro with a 6-speed and cobbled on big brakes and 17-inch tires and wheels. And we show up to run this thing. And Brock Yates comes over and he's looking at the car and seeing Kyle and I, we were both mid-20s and we were just like fearless, and this is before the internet. This is before YouTube. So you just read the reviews in the back of Sports Car Magazine, like at Watkins Glen, this is what we recommend how to run the track. So you show up. So you show up.
Yeah, that was life before YouTube, right?
Oh,
so you couldn't even go watch video.
No, we show up. So Kyle and I, my best friend Tom Baker, show up at Nelson's Ledges. None of us had ever driven it before in our life. So we're standing there, and there's a guy that lost it in some of the S bits, and it was raining, and you can see the whole bottom of this Cobra replica. He got it up on four wheels, and you could see the bottom of the car. So Kyle turns to me, and goes, "You get to drive."
So I nominate you.
So I bolt in the car, and I'm like memorizing. I memorized the notes, and you have a warm-up lap, then 3 flying laps, and that's it. And they give you your best lap time, and that's how you get time.
On to the next track.
Then you pile all your junk in the trunk of the car, and you drive.
So every track mark, you get one shot at it?
That's it.
Wow. So I did not realize that.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
And it's a 24-hour back in these, I haven't driven it in a while, but in 1993, 4, and 5, it was 24 hours a day. Like you threw your junk in the trunk, and then the next track you raced was Watkins Glen.
Yeah.
And you just drove to Watkins Glen, and you got your stuff out of the trunk. You went and and then you threw your junk back in the trunk and drove to Lime Rock. Wow. And then you just, skipped around the country. It was truly terrifying. So,
So you want to do it again, or is that past you where you're like, yeah, I'm good.
I was so glad I did it because it got me I should have done what everybody advised me to do, was like go buy a low powered car and learn how to drive and get your SCCA license and move your way up. Instead, I built a 500 horsepower 69 Camaro and I just sent it. Yeah. And I learned a lot of car control, and luckily God saved my life, but we just didn't know any better. So through that, I got to meet John Heinrichsey, and that's how I got into working on ride and hailing and high performance vehicle operations group. So like John's like, I've seen you've driven some open track days, you've driven some, I'll give you a shot at this.
Wow.
And it was all just self-taught, send it.
It's funny you mentioned John Heinrichsey. If you want to learn how to drive a track, go watch some of John's videos.
Yeah. That
fella, been there, done it, unbelievably high level. That guy can drive anything fast.
Yeah. So I got in that group in 2003, I think, or so, and I started working on performance cars. We formed a group inside GM called the High Performance Vehicle Operations Group. During that era, we tuned all the SSs, the Vs, all the Cadillac Vs, the ZL1 Camaro, all that kind of stuff came out of that team.
Oh, very cool. And the Z28 was definitely part of your handiwork, right?
Yeah, I was a program manager for the 2014-2015 Gen 5 Z28.
Cool history.
Yeah.
So back then, during that time, that was when Mike Copeland was at GM as well, right?
Yep, Copeland was doing like some of the SEMA show cars, and he was running like the pre-production prototype build area. So,
okay. How does technology transfer? Is that a big integral part of GM when you're looking at racing and you say, we are going to have an effort to take things we learn in racing and put it into production cars? Is that part of the mindset? Or is that not really?
So two big things happened. So in motorsports, a lot of the, like in NASCAR specifically and some of the other race series, they really wanted to reduce the amount of testing the team could do. Mm-hmm. So once you reduce the amount of track time, what teams could do, driving simulators and the simulation side of the business really grew up a lot. Now, the parallel on the OE side, on the manufacturer side, we're trying to reduce the amount of pre-production vehicles because they're very expensive. So building some extremely low volume experimental vehicles are very expensive. So we're trying to reduce our amount of dependency on hardware and move more virtual. So we're growing the simulation side of the business.
Oh.
So the driving simulators between racing and production are very closely linked to each other. And a lot of the tools that you use to do the virtual engineering on both sides are similar. So there's a huge technology transfer between the modeling, simulation, computational fluid dynamics, all that tire modeling, all that stuff is similar tool change between motorsports and racing. But then on the Corvette side, we raced the flat plane crank 5.5 liter engine for a couple years in the race program before we ever put it in production in the Z06. So that engine was actually being raced in a kind of a more race hardened version of it, but we proved out a lot of the technology on what ended up in the street car on the race car.
Can you talk at all about future generations of Corvette? Like, what's the ZR1 going to be?
What?
And then there's this talk of the Zora.
What?
You know, yeah, what?
I don't know. There's some crazy stuff on the internet. So, if you look at what GM has done historically with C5, C7, there's usually a cadence of cars that historically that we do. I'm not going to confirm or deny any of that.
You cannot speak that. You give me the Men in Black pen after.
Past history might be an indication of what's going to happen. Past performance is the best indicator of future performance.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
That's cool stuff. Out of all the generation Corvette marks, do you have a favorite?
Yeah, it depends on what you're going to do with it. So if you just want like a great track car, the new C8 Z07 is like a fantastic track car, very balanced, like a knife. Like the thing is very exact. If you want something to do roll-on burnouts in third gear to impress your neighbors, a C7 ZR1 is like
that's it.
That's it, man. That baby's she's pumping 755 horsepower and with a supercharger on it. It's got torque right now, and it'll just hit the tires and go. And it's a very track capable car. It's awesome, but it's with the weight distribution with the engine in the front, like moving the engine mid-engine, like change the whole game of the car, like makes it much more. The polar moment of inertia, everything about the car is like the C8s. You got one.
Yeah, great car. The rumor is the Camaro's going away. Is it going to come back or is it gone forever? And is this another one of those where you're like, I can't talk a lot about that.
The Gen 6 Camaro, the ZL11LE. I remember the first time I bolted in one. I have this weird thing, like I get to show up and I just get to take them straight out on the racetrack. So I bolted into one that took it off. And
you'd never driven the car before.
I never driven the car before in my life.
Go out on the track.
Go on the track. Which is, I try to approach like a magazine, right? But that thing's like a race car. Fantastic cars, but the Gen 6 car, they're super fast. They're a pinnacle. So can't comment about,
what's coming next or what's not coming next.
Yeah.
No, I totally understand. What can you talk about, Mark, with GM for product portfolio that's coming? So obviously the E-Ray is out and in production. What about the regular passenger car segment of it? A good friend of mine in Cincinnati, Mike, his neighbor just bought a Blackwing. And he sent me some video of it, and it's nasty. The car's fast.
Yeah, a CT5V Blackwing is the best four-door luxury sedan GM has ever built. It is truly a phenomenal car. It'll go over 200 miles an hour. It'll run 11 into the quarter mile. You can pound around on open track days. It's fully track hardened. And I think it's my favorite car. If I was just going to buy a car, you can drive it back and forth to dinner with your wife. It's super civilized, but then you can take it to an open track day and it's really fast.
Have you tracked one of those cars?
Oh, yeah.
Assuming.
Oh, yeah. Well, I've driven them. At GM, every car that's track capable has to go through a 24-hour endurance run. So all of us top-level drivers bolt in the car for a tank full of fuel.
Wow.
So you literally strap into it, fuel gauge is full. You run it as hard as it'll go for a tank full of fuel. Then you bring it around. The technicians service whatever, if it needs brake pads or tires or check the fuel level or whatever and the oil level, then we do it again. But
24 hours.
Just hard as we'll go. And that was really derived from kind of like John Heinrichs said, a Corvette owner is going to go to X number of open track days in the life of the car. And we kind of came up with this 24-hour number to make sure. So there's two things. There's track capable, lap time, then track durable. How durable is it? is we run 24 hours of endurance tests, and we do 200 quarter-mile drag passes.
200.
So
wow.
And no, but so right now, I mean, our car portfolio at GM, like we have such a wide variety of things at GM. It's kind of like, do you need a Duramax diesel to tow something? We have, those are really cool. Then we have electric bolts. So like the diversity of our portfolio right now at GM has never been greater. It's a crazy time to see everything that's being worked on.
The Duramax diesel, Mark, you mentioned something that I think's interesting. So they've got the new, is it a 3-liter diesel that goes in like the Tahoes?
Yeah, I had one of those.
Did you?
Yeah.
What'd you think of that?
Dude, it got 27 miles per gallon just running empty back and forth, 80 miles an hour to up northern Michigan. And then I could tow my enclosed trailer like no problem. The thing was like rock solid, 24-foot enclosed with my Camaro in the back, set the cruise at 80, which if it's legal in that state. And it would just roll, you know, and it worked great. I was like, the only reason I didn't buy another one was because when you pull into a gas pump, you're always kind of trying to find that diesel. Diesel pump.
Kind of fishing around.
Yeah, but I had one for 2 years, loved it. Towed my stuff great.
Awesome.
If you slow down to 60 miles an hour or 65, you could probably easily knock back 30 miles per gallon.
No kidding.
Yeah, and they drive. They're super quiet. They drive. The torque is like addictive. Like just right down low. Just 10-speed transmission. Just like it's always in the right gear.
Roll right into it.
Yeah, they work really well.
So what, aside from the build, so you've got your current build that's going on, the patina, really cool older drag car. What do you want to build next?
So I bought another rust-free 69 Camaro out of California, and I'm gathering the parts.
How do you find all these? Like, is there like a Stielow Classifieds? It's like every first-gen Camaro people put on, you go, yeah, I'll take that one. I'll take that one.
It's one of those things, just kind of put the word out to the squirrel network, and eventually somebody will, hey, I've stumbled across this or that. I mean, the car I have now, that old drag car, the Hobbs Camaro, I literally talked to a guy on Facebook. He reached out to me with a question, bantered back and forth a little bit, and I mentioned to him, like, hey, I'm looking for a patina 69 Camaro. He said, well, I got one, but I'm never going to sell it. And I said, well, if you ever decide to sell it, I'll buy it. So 2 years will go by. I get an IM on Facebook from this nice gentleman in Tennessee, and he's like, I finally want to sell it. We haggled back and forth on the price, and I bought it. It just kind of fell in my lap. That one did. Yeah. And I hadn't really planned on buying it. And it's got the car's got a really cool story. So, but that's kind of how I usually find most of my stuff.
Yeah. You going to do another 69 Camaro?
Yeah, so I got another 69 Camaro that I'm going to kind of take all the bits and pieces of the cars I liked that I thought worked really well and build a nice car I could take to open track days, and cars my wife and I have been doing these tours like Good Guys or Barrett Jackson cross-country tours.
Oh, yeah, like I saw you in Texas, that road tour deal they did. Yeah,
and that's a lot of fun. So I'm building a car to kind of be in that genre of another car.
Drive it, enjoy it, and just keep going. That's awesome.
So my days of trying to win these Optimus shootouts with these crazy cars, like, those cars have kind of turned more into track day cars and not really so much of a blend, and I just want to have kind of a blend car I'm not trying to win Optima with. So
yeah. And I think it's cool in our industry to see, like, look at Optima and how much that's grown and evolved, and now you have Drive Autocross, and then you throw Good Guys into the mix. If you're a car person today, there's like so many ways to enjoy your car and go out and run it. I mean, track days, and you and I were talking about some of these private driving clubs that are coming up. Yeah,
so we first started doing track development work at GM back in 2003 and 4. Renting a track was like super easy. You could always find track time. And now, like, you try to book a VIR or a Gingerman or whatever, they're packed. Like, there's like Porsche Club, there's Mustang Club, there's a Viper Club. Everybody's got, there's tons of places now you can take your car, and they have beginner group, novice group, advanced group. If you haven't done an open track a day, go out, get involved with that kind of stuff. And there's whatever genre you're into, the Subaru Club, everybody's got like a deal.
With your day job, so drag racing does fall underneath your realm. What do you think about the new class in NHRA that is essentially like a pro stock chassis except with a factory stock engine? Yeah,
so those are coming out this summer. Is it this summer that they're?
Yeah, it is this year.
Yeah, so I think it's going to be a good class. I mean, I think everybody's kind of come upon the same recipe for pro stock to a degree.
Yeah,
and so I think this will kind of freshen that up and give an opportunity to bring different powertrains into a competitive, something that looks a little more, door slammer kind of car. So I think those are
it still uses a little bit more, I don't want to say relevant powertrains, but production-based stuff.
Yeah.
To where, back to your point earlier about technology transfer, probably going to learn some things from the guys that are going to be running that class. Because racers are racers. They're going to push it as hard as they can. They're probably going to blow up some stuff and learn some stuff along the way.
Yeah, that's going to be a good class. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. And we've built a lot of Copo Camaros. We did the 5th gens and the 6th gens. So those cars are still neat legacy we're leaving behind. So.
What about Pro Mod? Does Chevrolet have any interest in Pro Mod, or is it more that very fringe thing that you look at?
Yeah, it's at an arm's length. I think we still help supply some of the bodies, but those things they're all unicorns. So
yeah. So, Mark, what's next for you and what's next for the car? So you got to get the current build finished.
Yeah, so I've kind of started just buying cars because when I find a good deal on them, I try to just buy them because they're getting harder and harder to find. So I got the 269 Camaros. I got an 88 Blazer that I built. My wife and I have been doing these tours in. And
that's a really cool build.
Yeah.
Is that a LT base engine?
So the first one I did a 78 Blazer with an LT in it. And that car was great, but it was 2-wheel drive. And my wife said she didn't like it because it didn't look trucky enough. So this one's 4-wheel drive, so it's more Chuck Norris.
Nice.
And this one I put a PFI motor in just because the integration's a lot easier. It's just an LS3, and the truck runs great. We put 3,800 miles on it in a week, so no problems.
Awesome, great driver.
Yeah.
So if you were going to do another powertrain, like with your new build, I'm assuming you're doing PFI in that rather than DI. Direct injection. Yeah, the Hobbs Camaro's PFI, and but then the next one is going to be DI. Okay. We figured out some of the cowl issues on some of the Salon stuff and some of the things I didn't like about torque-based engine management systems. So a lot of the DI stuff is torque-based. So when you push the pedal down, you're commanding torque. You're not commanding pedal. But no. What engine you doing in the Hobbs Camaro? LS7, but I want to make it look like a faker big block. Cool. So when you open the hood, I'm going to do the LS Classic valve covers and stuff like that. Yeah. What are you going to do for an intake? You going to do like the 3.2 kind of setup, or no? Just a single 4-barrel. Holly one to an adapter with a cowl induction air cleaner stuff on it. Neat. Yeah. So when you pop the hood, because it's a factory 396 car, I wanted it to look like a 396 under the hood, but I can't stand big blocks because they leak oil, and they're no offense to big black fans out there, but all the LS stuff. Once I got LS, they're just great. They don't leak any oil. They make a lot of power. Super durable. Parts are reasonable. It's hard really not to like an LS. Old school big blocks are cool, but they all have their place for different things. Yeah. So your old one though, the all aluminum one that you had in Red Witch, that was a killer piece. Yeah, for 1996, that was a pretty, with the 6-speed, that was a pretty steamy piece. Yeah. So. Well, Mark, any closing thoughts for anybody? Anything for aspiring hot rodders you want to let them know? Yeah, I mean, for me, it's always been like I get an idea in my head or a dream or a goal, and that drives the decisions on what I want to make for my project. So most of my projects have been like, I want to use this vehicle for this reason. And as you're building it, decisions become much easier because do I need that diff cooler? Well, yeah, because I'm going to do all these open track days. Do I need this really killer radiator? Yeah, because I want to go do open track days or whatever you want to do. Yeah. And, you kind of have a vision of what your project, what you want it to be when you're done. Yeah. And then the journey becomes easier and more fulfilling. Hey, I want to take my wife on Hot Rod Power Tour. Build a car that's comfortable and put air conditioning in it if you're going to take your wife. It'll be a much more pleasant experience. Happy wife, happy life. Yeah. No doubt about that. We all know that. Well, Mark, thank you so much for joining us today. Always appreciate your time. Thanks, Al. It's always good seeing you. Go out and enjoy your cars, your hobby, and we will see you all soon.
This has been the On All Cylinders podcast.
Powered by Summit Racing.
Check out new episodes coming soon at OnAllCylinders.com.
OnAllCylinders.com.
Thanks for listening.
See you next time.